HD 188753 AB. If you were standing on the surface of this planet, you would witness something that seems impossible. The sun would set over the horizon, only to be immediately followed by a second sun and then a third one. This planet is the first one ever reported in a tight triple star system, meaning that it has not one, not two, but three suns. More specifically, there is a main yellow star, very similar to our own sun. And then, orbiting nearby are two smaller stars that dance around each other, both circling the main yellow star. If you could survive on a hypothetical moon orbiting this giant, your shadow would split into three different directions, and true darkness might never come as the different suns took turns lighting up the sky. Its existence also raised an unsolved scientific mystery. The planet itself is a gas giant, slightly heavier than Jupiter, and it's so close to its stars that it completes a full lap around the main one in just 3.5 days. It's this proximity that creates the unsolved problem. According to the rules of how planets form, gas giants are supposed to grow far away from their stars in cold areas where there is plenty of dust and gas. Later, they drift inward. But in this system, the two other stars are so close that they would have cut off the supply of dust needed to build a planet. There simply should not have been enough room or material for this world to grow, yet the data suggested it was there. However, we haven't talked about the most disturbing thing about this planet yet. It might be a ghost. After they announced the discovery in 2005, another team of astronomers tried to find it again in 2007. They used very precise instruments, but found absolutely nothing. They claimed that if the planet was real, they would have seen it. No update has confirmed it since, and the unsolved scientific mystery remains. HD 80606b. This planet is also known as the Whiplash Planet, and you'll soon understand why. Here, the weather can go from freezing cold to an explosion of extreme heat within hours. That's because, while most planets, including Earth, travel in a nice, steady circle around their star, this planet follows a path that is incredibly stretched out, looking more like the orbit of a comet than a planet. For about 100 days, it drifts far away from its sun, floating in the freezing cold darkness, but then it begins a terrifying dive. In a span of just 20 hours, it blasts toward its star, swings around it at a dangerously close distance, and then slingshots back out into the void. This close approach is violent. The planet gets so close that if the Earth were in that position, our atmosphere would be ripped away and the surface would be instantly melted into magma. For this planet, the approach acts like a sudden explosion of energy. In just 6 hours, the temperature on the side facing the star skyrockets from roughly 932 degrees Fahrenheit to over 2,000. The star blasts the planet with more than 1,000 times the energy the Earth receives from the sun. If you were floating in the cloud tops, you would watch the sun swell up rapidly until it looked 30 times larger than it does in our sky. This sudden flash frying triggers what scientists call shockwave storms. Because the heat hits so fast, the atmosphere cannot handle it, and winds erupt from the hot zone at speeds of 11,000 miles per hour. Then, almost as quickly as it started, the planet flies away. It cools down so fast in less than 10 hours that it actually becomes invisible to infrared space telescopes like Spitzer. Astronomers are baffled by this planet because usually the gravity of the star should squeeze the planet and eventually force its orbit to become a circle. However, this planet seems to be very stiff rather than squishy, meaning it resists that change and could be trapped in this torture loop for another 10 billion years. PSRB 1257+12. Astronomers named this star and its planets after monsters and the undead, and for good reason. The central star, named Lich, after a fictional creature that uses magic to control the dead, is a pulsar, which is a type of neutron star that acts like a lighthouse in space. It spins incredibly fast, rotating about 160 times every single second. It is also incredibly hot, with temperatures reaching nearly 52,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Orbiting it are 3 planets that were the very first exoplanets ever confirmed, discovered back in the early 90s. To help you understand why they're called zombie planets, here's what would happen if you stood on one. You would be bathed in constant deadly radiation from the star that sterilizes everything. Looking up at the sky would be maddening. Since the star spins so fast while shooting out beams of energy, it would not look like a steady sun. It would look like a violent strobe light flashing 160 times a second, lighting up the alien landscape in a rapid fire pulse. These planets are basically zombies themselves. They likely formed from the debris left over after 2 white dwarf stars crashed into each other and merged billions of years ago. TRES 2b. TRES 2b is a gas giant similar in size to Jupiter, but it looks nothing like the planets in our own system. In 2011, astronomers identified it as the darkest exoplanet ever discovered. This alien world is basically pitch black, reflecting less than 1% of the light that falls on it. This makes it darker than a piece of coal or even black acrylic paint. What makes this more disturbing is that we're not 100% sure of why it's this dark. Nonetheless, we know that it's so close to its star that the temperature on the surface is over 1,790 degrees Fahrenheit. This intense intense heat means that reflective clouds made of ammonia simply cannot form. Instead, the atmosphere is likely filled with light-absorbing chemicals like vaporized sodium and potassium or gaseous titanium oxide. However, even these chemicals cannot fully explain why the planet is as black as it is, and the true cause remains a mystery. If you were to float near it, though, you likely wouldn't see a totally black sphere. Since the planet is so hot, it emits a faint and dim red glow. It would look like a giant burning ember or the hot coils of an electric stove floating in the void. WASP-17b. WASP-17b, also called Ditso, a name from Talamancan mythology referring to a god who gave names to the first people, is one of the weirdest planets in space. Two things make this planet pretty peculiar. One is that it was the first discovered planet with a retrograde orbit. In almost every star system we observe, planets travel around their star in the same direction that the star itself spins. However, Ditso moves in the completely opposite direction. This discovery shocked scientists because it challenged the traditional rules of how planets form, suggesting that this world had a violent history. Astronomers believe it may have been thrown into this backward loop after a near collision with another planet or a gravitational struggle that flung it off its original path. The second thing is that despite the planet being a huge monster, being almost twice as wide as Jupiter, thus making it one of the largest planets ever found, it's incredibly light, with just half of Jupiter's mass. This makes it extremely puffy, with a density so low that if you could find a bathtub big enough to hold it, the entire planet would float on water like a beach ball. However, this planet isn't innocuous. Its atmosphere is a nightmare of heat and glass, and in 2023, the James Webb Space Telescope detected clouds made of quartz. Because the planet is scorching hot, with temperatures around 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit, these crystals form directly from gas. WASP-127b. The atmosphere of this planet is being ripped around at speeds that break every planetary record we know. On here, winds scream around the equator at up to 20,500 miles per hour, fast enough to cross Earth from one side to the other in well under an hour. This is the fastest jet stream ever measured on a planet. Also, that wind is incredibly hot. The planet is a gas giant that's close enough to its star that 1 year is just 4 days, and its atmosphere is around 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Astronomers discovered these winds by watching how starlight passes through the planet's atmosphere during a transit. Part of the gas was moving toward us, part moving away, both at enormous speed. The only explanation that fits is a powerful supersonic jet stream racing around the equator. These winds move almost 6 times faster than the planet itself rotates. For comparison, the fastest winds ever measured in our own solar system, on Neptune, are only about 1,100 miles per hour. On WASP-127b, that would count as a gentle breeze. The planet's weather is not uniform either. Observations show that the poles are cooler than the rest of the planet, and there is even a measurable temperature difference between the morning side and the evening side. Gliese 436b. The phrase, hot burning ice, sounds like a paradox, but strange as it sounds, it's actually happening on Gliese 436b. This planet is also known as Awahali, which is the Cherokee word for eagle. The name is perfect because of a legend where an eagle flies to the sun, and the sun kisses its tail feather. That is exactly what is happening here because the star is blasting the planet with so much radiation that it has created a gigantic cloud of hydrogen gas trailing behind it. This tail is longer than 8 million miles, making the planet look more like a colossal comet. It is losing its air at a terrifying rate because it sits dangerously close to the star, only about 3% of the distance between Earth and the Sun. Also, while the planet is roughly the size of Neptune, it behaves in a way that breaks the rules of a normal solar system. Instead of circling around the middle or equator of the star like a normal planet, it travels over the star's poles, moving in a nearly vertical, perpendicular loop. It is literally orbiting sideways compared to how it should be. The paradox we talked about previously is because while the temperature is around 820 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hot enough to melt lead, scientists believe the interior might be made of hot ice. The gravity and pressure are so crushing that water is squeezed into a solid state, even though it is burning hot. The atmosphere is also chemically wrong, filled with carbon monoxide instead of the methane that models predict should be there. Astronomers believe this planet did not start out this way. It is likely that a hidden, massive companion planet pushed it out of its safe orbit and threw it into this dangerous path, forcing it to be slowly eaten alive by its own star while the culprit hides in the dark. KOI 55. KOI 55 is a planet that survived the impossible, being eaten alive. It orbited a star known as a subdwarf B star, which was so hot that it burned nearly 6 times hotter than the sun. Then, 18 million years ago, this star expanded even more and turned into a red giant. When this happened, KOI 55 didn't just get close to the burning star, but it actually plunged deep inside the star's layers. It was basically eaten alive, swallowed whole by a massive ball of plasma. The star stripped away and evaporated all the gas, but something weird happened. Most planets would be completely destroyed immediately, but this one survived. Nowadays, only its burnt and rocky core remains, and to make you understand how badly the star scorched the planet, even after millions of years, its temperature is still around 12,000 degrees Fahrenheit. If you were to teleport to the surface, you would likely vaporize into a cloud of atoms faster than your brain could process that you had arrived. The planet is now smaller than Earth and orbits its star incredibly fast, completing a full year in less than 6 hours. LTT 9779b. You are probably used to thinking of clouds as being white, vaporous, and fluffy, but the clouds on this planet are made of metal and glass. This planet is officially named Quankoa, also known as the Mirror Planet. That's because it's actually the most reflective planet ever discovered. Due to those clouds, it acts like a massive mirror in space, bouncing back about 73% of all the light that hits it. It's also the reason why telescopes struggle to detect specific signals from deep within the planet, as its metal-dense atmosphere acts like a metallic blanket. It's roughly the size of Neptune, but it is nothing like the cold blue giants in our own solar system. Quankoa is what scientists call an ultra-hot Neptune because it sits dangerously close to its star. In fact, it is so close that it finishes a full orbit in less than 24 hours, and the star is basically cooking the planet alive. The temperatures on the side facing the star soar to over 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. Matter of fact, this planet should not have existed in the first place. It lies in what astronomers call the Neptunian Desert, a region close to a star where planets of this size usually cannot survive because intense radiation strips away their atmosphere. However, since Quankoa's atmosphere is this heavy with metals, it does not puff out effectively. Fomalhaut b. Dagon. Imagine discovering a new planet, taking a picture of it, and naming it, only to watch it slowly fade away until it completely vanishes into the darkness. This is the story of Fomalhaut b, also known as Dagon, a planet just 25 light-years away, making it the closest one featured in this video. When astronomers using the Hubble Space Telescope announced its discovery in 2008, it was a historic moment because it was one of the very first planets to be seen directly in a photograph. Usually, planets are found indirectly by looking at how a star wobbles or dims, but this one was caught on camera as a tiny dot of light moving through a ring of debris. However, as scientists continued to watch it over the years, the planet started doing things that made no sense. It was not glowing with heat like a massive planet should, and instead of staying on a stable path, it appeared to be drifting away from its star. By 2014, the dot had faded so much that it was gone. A study published in 2020 finally solved the mystery. Fomalhaut b was never a planet at all. It was actually a massive, expanding cloud of fine dust created by a cosmic crash. Two giant icy asteroids, each about 120 miles wide, had likely smashed into each other at incredibly high speeds just before the first photos were taken. The bright spot astronomers saw was the debris from this explosion spreading out into space. Kelt 9b. 670 light-years away from us, there's a gas giant that is 3 times heavier than Jupiter, and it's so hot that even molecules like water and carbon dioxide get torn apart, and heavy metals like iron and titanium turn into gas. This planet orbits a massive burning blue star, and it's actually locked in a very tight orbit, so much so that its year is less than 1.5 days. Because it is so close, one side of the planet is permanently facing the star, constantly being blasted by heat and light. The temperature on this day side reaches over 7,700 degrees Fahrenheit. Metals on this planet can continuously cycle between solid and gaseous states in an endless loop. On the day side, they evaporate. Winds then carry the gases to the slightly cooler night side, where they might briefly condense again before being transported back to the day side, and so on. The radiation is so powerful that the planet is puffing up like a balloon, making it very large. However, the star is stripping away about 10 million tons of the planet's material every single second. This creates a massive tail of gas trailing behind the planet, making it look like a gigantic comet. Also, its fate is grim. Scientists predict that in less than 1 billion years, its star will expand into a red giant and Kelt 9b will be eaten alive by the very sun that is currently incinerating it. PSOJ 318.5-22. This is what's called a rogue planet, and the sun never rises here. That's because there's actually no sun at all. PSOJ 318.5-22 is one of the loneliest places in space. Unlike the Earth, which circles the sun, or Jupiter, which circles its own star, this massive object does not orbit anything. It was likely kicked out of its home system shortly after it formed, or perhaps it formed all by itself, leaving it to float forever in the empty void between stars. You might think that a planet without a star would be a frozen ball of ice, but this world is actually literally a burning furnace. It is roughly the size of Jupiter, but it is much heavier, packing 8 times as much mass into the same space. Because it is very young in cosmic terms, only about 23 million years old, it still glows with the intense heat from its creation. Telescopes have watched the planet change brightness, which tells scientists that it is covered in thick, stormy clouds that rotate around the planet every few hours. However, these are not clouds made of water vapor. They are made of hot dust and molten metal. Recent studies using the James Webb Space Telescope suggest that the highest clouds are made of tiny grains of quartz or sand. Deeper down, there are heavy clouds made of liquid iron. If you want to discuss this video or suggest an idea for the next one, join my Discord.